Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. I believe Trump released his most dangerous executive order a couple of days ago. I'm going to explain what I mean in this video because this implicates all of our lives as Americans. And in short, what he seems to be trying to do is gobble up all the power and authority into his powers and authority as the sitting president. Now, why is that problematic? Because it violates the United States Constitution. The framers who were afraid, they were very afraid of having a government where one person had all the power. That is precisely what they were trying to escape when they left England and came here and stole the land and enslaved African Americans. Well, that's for another day. But they were trying to escape the monarchy back in England, the king, the crown. And so they created a government where there are three branches and they are co-equal branches. None of them are more powerful than the other. So Trump is going against that basic, fundamental, constitutional principle. When he, in this executive order, tries to take authority away from both the legislative branch and the judicial branch. So let's look at this executive order and you'll see what I am saying here. Hello, everyone. I got great news. The merch is finally here. We've been waiting and waiting, but we can finally begin branding our channel. But we need your help to get our brand out there. If you like what we provide and like what you see, please go to the channel and grab your hoodie, your t-shirt, your mug, and we got more designs and products on the way. Just visit our YouTube channel at the Defiant Lawyers Network. Also, we will donate a portion of each dollar you spend on our merch towards some nonprofit. And remember, as always, stay woke. So the name of the executive order is Ensuring Accountability for All Agencies. It sounds real, reasonable, and rational until you start digging into the details. What's the old saying? The devil is in the details. So let's go and look at some of the details. All right, Section 1, Policy and Purpose. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to agree with all the sentences that I believe are constitutional, and then I'm going to disagree with the ones that I believe are unconstitutional. Okay? Let's read. The Constitution vests all executive power in the president and charges him with faithfully executing the laws. I agree. Since it would be impossible for the president to single-handedly perform all the executive business of the federal government, the Constitution also provides for subordinate officers to assist the president in his or hers executive duties. I agree. In the exercise of their often considerable authority, these executive branch officials remain subject to the president's ongoing supervision and control. I agree. The president, in turn, is regularly elected by and accountable to the American people. I agree. This is one of the structural safeguards, along with the separation of powers, and that's what I refer to about being three co-equal branches. There is the separation of powers. Anyway, between the executive and legislative branches, regular elections for the Congress, and an independent judiciary whose judges are appointed by the president by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, by which the framers created a government accountable to the American people. I agree with that also. But this executive order does not follow what he just said. However, previous administrations have allowed so-called, quote, independent regulatory agencies, close quote, to operate with minimal presidential supervision. They've done that because that is the law. Now, SCOTUS issued a case, it was either 23 or 24, maybe I think it was 23, where they took a lot of that autonomy away from federal agencies, okay, and put it back with Congress. This current Supreme Court does some of those conservatives have a real issue with regulatory agencies, okay? And they take a swipe at them all the time. So if this executive order reaches SCOTUS, they're probably going to agree with Trump. So that's a spoiler alert. I'm just letting you know that. But we don't have to agree with it because this is the way the U.S. Constitution has been interpreted for hundreds of years. All right, so that's why the other presidents have allowed the federal agencies to have a lot of authority over their doings. Congress created them and then gave them the autonomy to operate as they see fit. Again, SCOTUS hit at that. Anyway, these regulatory agencies currently exercise substantial executive authority without sufficient accountability to the president and through him to the American people. Moreover, these regulatory agencies have been permitted to promulgate significant regulations without review by the president. So he's making the argument here that these regulatory agencies are not as beholden to the president as he thinks they should. So he has issued this executive order, trying to rein them in and bring them under his authority. And he says that is so that those agencies can be responsive to the American people. Well, that sounds good, right? But they're already responsive to the American people in that the American people elected the members of Congress who created those regulatory agencies. So they're already responsive to the American people because the American people voted in the Congress who created the agencies that Trump is talking about. Anyway, he goes on to say, these practices undermine such regulatory agencies' accountability to the American people and prevent a unified and coherent execution of federal law. For the federal government to be truly accountable to the American people, officials who wield vast executive power must be supervised and controlled by the people's elected president. So there it is. He is grabbing power from Congress because Congress created these agencies and created some of them in such a way that they operate independent of the president. Now, this executive order is making the argument because they're agencies, they are part of the executive branch, and therefore they should come under the control of the chief executive officer of our country, which is the president. But don't forget the separation of powers. Don't forget there are three different co-equal branches: Congress, the president, and the courts, federal courts. And so the Congress has the power and authority to create these agencies and then determine how they operate. That should not come under the control of the president because Congress created them. That is interfering with the separation of powers. Does that make sense? So what we're seeing here is we're seeing the Trump administration, again, overstepping Congress and taking control of agencies that Congress created and determined how they should operate. And that is the move of someone who wants to wield power, all power, under his authority. So it sounds a whole lot like the beginning of authoritarianism. And that's what many people have been concerned about even before Trump was elected, even back in the first administration. Well, it seems as though those people's fears are certainly coming to pass. I know I've done many videos warning the American people, especially African Americans, that this would likely happen. And so we're seeing it actually come to fruition. But this executive order also reaches over into the judicial branch and tries to take authority from them as well. Now, let me show you what I mean. So we're going to jump ahead here and find another spot that I highlighted and wanted to read to you. And it's this section, Section 7, Rules of Conduct Guiding Federal Employees' Interpretation of the Law. The President and the Attorney General, subject to the President's supervision and control, shall provide authoritative interpretation of law for the executive branch. Now, that's problematic in my mind because the Constitution gives the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, the authority to say what the law is. And then there is a case that dates back to 1803, way back then, that's like 400 years ago, that says the United States Supreme Court says what the law is. It is within the province of SCOTUS to let the country know what the law is. In other words, SCOTUS interprets the law, not the executive branch. In that case is Marbury versus Madison. So now we see the Trump administration is trying to again overreach SCOTUS, Congress, and SCOTUS. You see, this should read that the President and the Attorney General, subject to the Supreme Court, shall provide authoritative interpretation of law for the executive branch. In other words, yeah, I can see where the Attorney General and the President has to say what the law is to the executive branch. I can see that. But what they say the law is should be consistent with and subject to what SCOTUS has already said. And if SCOTUS has not said something on a particular area, then they need to file a case and get it in front of SCOTUS so SCOTUS can say. It is not the job of the President and the Attorney General to interpret law for the country. Now, they said for the executive branch. Well, it's a slippery slope. In the law, you have to be always watchful of slippery slopes. So he says the executive branch now, and then it becomes the whole government later. So this is problematic as well. And once again, we see the Trump administration overreaching and trying to center all the power and authority of our government in Trump. And that is a problem. It is unconstitutional. Now, like I said earlier, this is a very conservative court, and they don't like a lot of regulation. They don't like these agencies doing things on their own, especially apart from Congress. But it is very feasible. I won't say it's probable, but feasible that this Supreme Court will agree with Trump and give him a whole lot more expansive power as the chief executive of our country. So all that needs to happen there is some states or some organization, and I'm sure it's going to happen, is going to sue about this if they haven't already. And eventually it's going to get to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS is going to interpret the law. SCOTUS is going to have to do what they are tasked with doing constitutionally, which again is interpreting the law. So they're going to have to tell Trump, this is what the law says. But my point is, they are likely to interpret it in a way that agrees with Trump. Now, let me say this before I close. All of this was spelled out and publicized in that 930-something page so-called Mandate for Leadership Project 2025, I did so many videos warning you folks what was coming. And everything I said and predicted is happening in front of our eyes. So the country is having its FAFO moment. And when I say FAFO, I'm talking about fool around and find out. That's what's happening. All right. So I wanted to bring that to you because it is extremely important what is going on in our country. We're experiencing some crazy, crazy times. And I warned you. I told you this would happen if Trump got back in office. And we're only first 4 weeks? We have almost 4 years of this left. And it's going to get a lot worse. Anyway, I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video. And always remember, stay woke.